Friend of the channel, Eureka Ergonomic are running their massive Black Friday sale right now with up to 40% off select items, and you can stack an additional 8% off any non-clearance item when you use offer code SKILLUP at checkout. It's a perfect chance to pick up their incredible Matthias office chair, inspired by the legendary Eames design, but adapted with improved ergonomics for prolonged use at a desk. It's the perfect complement to your home office or gaming setup. It's already discounted as part of their sale, but you can get an additional 8% off when you use offer code SKILLUP. Stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Gamers, with Call of Duty out the way, we are now officially done with the big releases of 2025. Don't get me wrong, Metroid Prime 4 is looking great, Miles McKenzie aside, but it isn't quite at the same level as a game that sells 20 million units in a bad year. Now we start the wind down process, putting Christmas parties into our diaries and getting ready to watch Claire Obscure win every single award at the Game Awards, including Best Mobile Game, even though it's not nominated and it's not even on mobile. Me personally, I've actually started putting serious hours into Arc Raiders this past week, and I'm just as hooked as everybody else is, so do look forward to a review on that next week. Plus, we just recorded an episode of the Friends Per Second podcast where we got to interview a few people who were instrumental in the creation of the recently announced controller, VR headset, and of course, the Gabe Cube. That episode will be live over the weekend, so do be sure to subscribe and ding the notification bell so you won't miss it. But it's also available on your podcast platform of choice. Just search Friends Per Seconds and you should find us pretty quickly. Okay, that's all I got for the intro, so let's get to the news, shall we? Alright, a lot of Activision news this week. Let's kick things off with a game that everyone's already forgotten about, Call of Duty Black Ops 7. This year's entries certainly ain't beaten this franchise's washed allegations. Black Ops 7 reached a peak of just over 100,000 concurrent players on Steam during its opening weekend, which might be considered a success for most games, but not for an IP as renowned as this one. Comparing its launch to that of the previous entry, it's especially telling. Black Ops 6's peak on Steam was almost triple that, sitting at over 300,000 concurrent players. Twitch viewership paled in comparison too, with the latest game reaching 160,000 concurrent viewers versus the almost 400,000 concurrent viewers for Black Ops 6. But it doesn't end there, as the lack of enthusiasm for the franchise is echoed in the review scores for Black Ops 7, sitting at a score of 67 versus Black Ops 6 hitting a strong 83. Activision have tried their best to mask the pain with a vague celebration tweet that shyly omits any mention of player numbers. All it says is, quote, "Congratulations to Treyarch, Raven, and all the incredible Black Ops 7 developers, and thank you to Call of Duty fans everywhere. Across opening weekend, we've seen a great response to the quality and depth of gameplay in Black Ops 7. What an odd thing to say. This is only the start. Our teams have an incredible year of content and events lined up, beginning with Season 1 around the corner, and we couldn't be more excited for what's to come in Black Ops 7, end quote. Again, in comparison, here's what they posted in response to the launch of Black Ops 6, quote, "Together, you made Black Ops 6 the biggest Call of Duty 3-day opening weekend ever. #1 total players, #1 hours played, #1 total matches," end quote. There are some things to keep in mind when talking about these stats, of course, like the fact that Steam doesn't account for all the players across Battle.net, the Xbox PC app, or consoles. The latter two are especially notable since Black Ops 7 is available on Game Pass, though it's only available in the Ultimate tier, which is now 50% more expensive owing to the recent price hikes. So I imagine there aren't as many people playing there as compared to when Black Ops 6 launched day and date into Game Pass on the lower tier back in the day. Its low performance is also likely related to the fact that 2025 has been an especially competitive year for shooters. Battlefield has made a triumphant return to the spotlight with Battlefield 6, which gave fans the spiritual successor to Battlefield 4 that they've been waiting for. There's also the excellent extraction shooter Arc Raiders, which has been taking up a lot of people's time lately, mine included, and that game is only picking up players as time goes on, seemingly unshaken by the latest Call of Duty release. Fact of the matter is, interest in the Call of Duty franchise is waning at the precise moment that more compelling offerings step into the scene. And that's not specific to just Black Ops 7 either, as Google Stats indicate searches for the term Call of Duty have been down 37% year on year. One thing that certainly isn't helping Black Ops 7's case is its use of generative AI. Over the weekend, a number of posts were made about this across social media, including a now locked thread on Reddit which shared screenshots of multiple cosmetic items that raise suspicion regarding generative AI use, one of them appearing to mimic that Studio Ghibli AI image trend that was doing the rounds earlier this year, because that's what I certainly think of when I think Call of Duty. Studio Ghibli animation. Activision provided a statement to several publications inquiring on the matter, which reads, quote, "Like so many around the world, we use a variety of digital tools, including AI tools, to empower and support our teams to create the best gaming experiences possible for our players. Our creative process continues to be led by the talented individuals in our studios," end quote. I mean, if it wasn't AI slop, they definitely would have said that it wasn't AI slop, so I think it's pretty safe to assume that it's AI slop. If that wasn't confirmation enough, it's also alluded to on Steam, where developers and publishers are required to disclose AI-generated content. A statement present on the Black Ops 7 store page since August this year reads, quote, "Our team uses generative AI tools to help develop some game assets," end quote. This contradicts what the game's associate creative director Miles Leslie had to say during an interview with IGN the same month, in which he said, quote, "We have generative AI tools to help us, but none of that goes in the game. We've come out and been very clear that we use these tools to help the team, but they do not replace any of the fantastic team members we have that are development, doing the final touches, and building the content to put into the game, end quote. Very difficult to reconcile these comments with the clear Studio Ghibli AI filter that we're seeing here, but I don't think we're ever going to be able to get a straight answer from Activision on that. Regardless, an AI-led approach makes a lot of sense given Call of Duty is a Microsoft-owned game, a company that's gone all in on AI, going so far as to effect a round of layoffs earlier this year to free up capital for AI investment. Not every Microsoft studio is utilizing AI in their development. In fact, Obsidian came out just this week and said that they weren't. But Microsoft are trying to cram AI into absolutely everything that company does, and generative AI art stuff like this is clearly meant to begin the process of normalization, wearing down our resistance so we don't complain when more and more parts of the game are developed utilizing this technology. Again, AI's impact on creative endeavors is complicated, and I'm not entirely against it when it can help teams overcome technical hurdles, but the minute that creativity itself is outsourced to the machine, such as in the case of slop art or the AI voices in the finals and Arc Raiders, that's the moment where the line has been crossed and AI's impact is destructive rather than additive. In some other Activision news, did you hear that they nearly purchased Minecraft? The Rushmore podcast, a show run by Ari Emanuel, CEO of entertainment agency Endeavor, recently had on two notable guests to talk about video games. So who better to speak on that topic than Tesla CEO and guy who pays people to play video games for him, Elon Musk, and wait for it, former Activision CEO Bobby Kotick. Ish. Anyway, the topic of Minecraft came up at one point and Kotick had this to say, quote, "Yeah, I almost bought it. I had to spend 5 days in Stockholm with the guy who founded the company, and then we offered him 1.5 billion. And then he said, oh, by the way, I'm quitting, and my top leadership guys are all quitting, and they only had 30 employees at the time," end quote. Kotick then told Notch that he couldn't run developer Mojang before saying, quote, "He called me and said, Microsoft offered me 2.5 billion for the company. I said, yeah, I'll go airplane shopping with you, but you've got to take that offer," end quote. I think the absolute worst quote from this conversation came later though, when Bobby Kotick started shamelessly glazing Elon Musk, quote, "Elon truly would be the best owner of any game company. No, he would. There's not a person more qualified to build and run a game company," end quote. Something tells me that old mate Bobby is looking for an investor and knows exactly the way to butter up Elon. For how better to ingratiate yourself to someone who lies about playing video games than to lie about their imagined ability to create video games. God, I feel like I need a shower after just reading the transcript of that interview. Let's move on. Sticking with Microsoft a little longer, sort of, ASUS appeared to be quite chuffed about the release of the ROG Xbox Ally. During their Q3 2025 earnings call, the company's co-CEOs and CFOs were present, and they had this to say in response to the ROG Xbox Ally's performance, quote, "We believe that we have achieved our original goal in terms of premium positioning and creating a new growth driver in the gaming segment, and that's why we launched the third generation ROG Ally last month, featured a deeper collaboration with Xbox. Since its launch, we've seen the market response to it has been extremely positive, and particularly, there's been an appetite for the premium higher-end models, exceeding our expectations. In fact, these high-end variants are currently in short supply, and we are working closely with key component suppliers to ramp up production and fill the demand gap that currently exists," end quote. Do note that they didn't release the total number of units sold, and so I'm a bit like, okay, that information is kind of important. I don't doubt that it's been successful, as I've also heard that it's had a strong reception at the retail level, but without knowing exactly where those baseline projections were, and without knowing what the revenue split is between ASUS and Microsoft for this device, it's really hard to read too much into these announcements. On the topic of Xbox hardware, Xbox President Sarah Bond had this to say when speaking to Fortune magazine about the future of Xbox, quote, "Hardware is absolutely core to everything that we do at Xbox. We know our most valuable players, the people who love Xbox, love the hardware experience. That's why we're working on next generation hardware. It's going to be a powerful experience and one that also enables people to take their library with them. The Xbox experience starts with the console, then gives something to people they can experience across all screens if they choose to," end quote. So nothing too new there in the sense that she continues to reiterate Microsoft's stated commitment to hardware, despite the fact that their hardware sales continue to tumble. And there still doesn't seem to be a compelling reason to buy the next-gen Xbox when pre-built PCs will do the same job, while consoles like the PlayStation and the Switch give you access to exclusive titles. I think the more interesting thing she had to say here was in regard to the shift in generation of gamers. When asked about the differences between the habits of boomers and Gen Z, Bond said this, quote, "The way gaming was originally constructed, it was very locked that the games and the hardware and the experiences could only be experienced in one place. That's how a lot of people were introduced to gaming. We see younger people play more across devices and less likely to associate themselves with a single device experience and say, I'm a console gamer or I'm a PC gamer. People just say, I like to play games," end quote. And yeah, I think there's plenty of truth to that. Certainly a big reason for that is that mobile devices have become a lot more powerful, and the caliber of games we're getting on mobile now far exceed what was available a decade ago. Hell, many of the most successful games in the world, like Fortnite and Genshin Impact, have mobile versions that offer the same experience as their PC versions. At the same time, the Switch ain't exactly ancient history, and that thing just became the second highest selling console of all time, while being the least powerful of the 3 consoles that generation, resulting in huge gaps in its third-party lineup since many games just couldn't run on the Switch. So while people may play more games across devices, they're still willing to invest in hardware when that hardware delivers them experiences that they can't get anywhere else. A quick lightning round to finish off, and Intrepid Studios, the developer behind the work-in-progress MMORPG Ashes of Creation, has suddenly announced that the game will be releasing into early access on Steam next month. If you're unaware of what this is, Austin describes it as the Star Citizen of fantasy MMOs, in the sense that it's a wildly ambitious project that's been treading water for almost 9 years now, funded via very, very expensive supporter packs that offer exclusive items and access to early builds of the game. And the people are not happy with this announcement. In a post on the game's subreddit, early adopters say the game is very much in alpha state, with even its biggest fans decrying that it's not at all ready for a full public launch. Replies guess that this move is likely a result of dwindling funds or an attempt to scoop up all of the new world players left stranded after the recent announcement that it'd be going into maintenance mode. Short-sighted move though, if feedback on the game's current state is anything to go by. Some time ago on our website, thisweekinvideogames.com, our journalist Maddie Agnew wrote an op-ed around the news that Riot Games had shut down their subsidiary Hypixel Studios after over a decade of working on their Minecraft-style fantasy game Hytale. Well, good news, Hytale is back. Riot has sold the title and the studio back to co-founder Simon Collins Laflamme, who says work on the game has recommenced. In an announcement post made to the game's website, he says, quote, "We are thrilled to announce that we have acquired Hytale from Riot Games. While it didn't make sense for them to continue developing it in its current form, they ultimately wanted what's best for players, and that's for us to eventually play a revised version of the game. We are grateful to Riot Games for making this possible. Over the past few weeks, we have rehired more than 30 developers who know this game inside and out, with additional returns expected in the coming days. Together, we're going back to the original vision for Hytale. We're fully independent and personally committed to funding Hytale for the next 10 years, end quote." Further down the post, he promises that an early access date will be revealed soon. There was also quite forthcoming about what to expect when it does arrive. Quote, "Hytale isn't some polished AAA release waiting in the wings. It's messy, it's janky. I think there's a lot of work to be done. My plan? Get it out to you as soon as possible, no more waiting. You'll get to play through it, rough edges and all," end quote. A brief update on the trial involving developer Unknown Worlds and their publisher Krafton. You might remember that the studio founders were promised a multi-million-dollar earnout if its early access launch was a success, only for Krafton to then fire those co-founders before that earnout could happen. Krafton are accused of initially attempting to persuade the founders to delay the game based on now abandoned claims it wasn't ready for release. But when that failed, Krafton reportedly turned to a plan B. According to the website Game Developer, a trial brief indicates the ousted founders of Unknown Worlds claim Krafton went on to establish a secret task force called Project X with one sole purpose: to make a deal with the founders over the earnout or execute a takeover, as corroborated by Slack messages between Krafton CEO Chang-Han Kim and Unknown Worlds' newly appointed CFO Richard Yoon. The pre-brief argues that this was all an attempt for Kim to save his own skin, reading, quote, "Kim expressed his frustration to Charlie Cleveland at a May 20 meeting in Los Angeles. He told Cleveland that paying the earnout could cause the value of the studio to drop significantly, and that he, as the person responsible for the investment, would have to take responsibility," end quote. It also states that Kim asked ChatGPT for advice on how to avoid paying the earnout, to which it reportedly told him that it would be, quote, "difficult to cancel," end quote. Probably should have listened to that chatbot, Kim. Here's an insane story. City Skylines 2 developer Colossal Order has announced a mutual split with Paradox Interactive, with ongoing development of the game handed over to subsidiary Iceflake Studios beginning next year. No bad blood between them, apparently, as they say the decision was, quote, "made thoughtfully and in the interest of both teams, ensuring the strongest possible future for the City Skylines franchise," end quote. Quite big news, actually, since the two have been partnered for a long time now, beginning with their first game, Cities in Motion, back in 2011, then continuing with its sequel before landing on City Skylines, which actually became a massive hit, selling over 12 million copies. City Skylines 2, though, was a disaster when it launched in 2023, due to it being in an awful technical state, and with such expensive DLC, the studio was forced to apologize and refund owners, and while the console releases were supposed to drop day and date, they were pushed back multiple times and still are not out 2 years later. Fingers crossed the new owners are able to get that stuff moving. This may come as a shock to you, but there are people out there with a burning desire to keep playing Concord. So much so that a group of developers over on the Concord Delta Discord have managed to spin up private servers for the game. As expected though, Sony didn't seem too happy about that, and as such, videos of the custom matches the group have shared are getting DMCA struck by Markscan, a digital protection agency previously responsible for the takedown of fan projects like the Bloodborne 60 FPS patch and that PlayStation 1 demake. Concord dead for a second time, perhaps? It's looking likely. Speaking of dead live service shooters, Destiny. No, I'm sorry, that's too harsh, but you know, I can make that joke. We go way back, all right? I mean it with love. You might recall they're involved in a lawsuit with a writer that alleged that Bungie copied aspects of his writing in Destiny 2's Red War campaign, and that Bungie were unable to dismiss the claims as they weren't able to reproduce evidence to the contrary because they had removed the Red War from the game, and the only record of it was, you know, third-party videos on YouTube. That wasn't enough for the courts, however, as reported by the Game Post. A recent filing reads, quote, "Defendant has admitted it cannot produce the entirety of the relevant form of Destiny 2 for the court's review, and that the attached YouTube videos and Destinypedia pages are third-party original materials, as defendant admits in its reply. There's now no feasible way for defendant to provide the court with a reviewable form of the Red War or Osiris campaigns or to produce them," end quote. As such, the lawsuit has now been settled as of the 12th of November. The details of the agreement and compensation have not been disclosed. Finalists for this year's Game Awards have been announced, and as expected, Claire Obscure Expedition 33 has been nominated for basically everything you could imagine. I'm surprised it didn't get a nomination for Best Esports Game. It leads with 12 nominations across 10 categories, including Game of the Year, and 3 nominations in Best Performance. Death Stranding 2 and Ghost of Yotei follow with 7 nominations apiece, including Game of the Year. Great year for indies too, as Hades 2 is also up there with 6 nominations all up, alongside Hollow Knight Silksong with 5 nominations, and rounding out the Game of the Year candidates is Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Really glad it made it on there, though I think we all know who's going to be taking home that trophy at the end of the night. Hey, have you guys seen those first images of the Zelda movie? I don't want to jump the gun, but I can't deny it looks pretty damn cool. The outfits are on point. There was also a leaked set photo showing Aussie actress Deechan Lockman as Impa, and she's like spot on, man. Couldn't ask for better casting there. Sadly, we've still got a while to wait as the film's slated for release on May 7th, 2027. I will indeed be seated. Finally, to cap things off, a very surprising partnership between Unity and Epic Games. Announced via the Epic's website, the news is that the two would be working together to publish Unity-developed games in Fortnite. And if you're a developer, please let me know how on earth this works, because I honestly can't wrap my head around it. Conversely, it was also announced that Unreal developers will be able to utilize Unity's cross-platform commerce system. I mean, yeah, this is really crazy. We've always thought of Unity and Unreal as two directly competing platforms. It's really wild to see this. Like, imagine if you could play Xbox games on a oh wait, never mind. Let's just, yeah, I guess that's just how things are now. Want to get even more games coverage? Well, check out our website this week in videogames.com. It's 100% ad-free because websites have too many ads. And so we were like, hey, let's just make a website without ads and see what happens. We did it, and it worked. And with a full-time team of journalists, we're able to cover news as it happens. Plus, we go deeper with expert op-eds, features, and columns like this week's from industry analyst Simon Carlos, who breaks down why some games just don't sell well even when they get banging reviews. A great write-up, well worth a read, so if you want to check it and everything else out, head over to thisweekinvideogames.com to sign up either for free or as a paid supporter. And with that, back to the video. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, one announcement that Austin was particularly excited for this week was Guild Wars Reforged. But maybe because he originally thought it was a Guild Wars 2 thing, I don't know. But this is a revitalization of the first Guild Wars game from 2005, which ArenaNet has still kept around despite its sequel. They're making a bunch of audio, visual, and quality of life improvements for this one to bring it up to speed somewhat, which includes controller support and Steam Deck verification. There'll be a free update for anyone who already owns Guild Wars, and it's out on December 3rd. One kind of interesting announcement this week, which is also a bit of a cancellation maybe, is EA making some announcements around F1 25. They made it clear that next year they're planning to release a paid expansion for the game, which will include stuff related to the real-world F1 Racing Championship, and they won't be releasing a standalone game. They'll reserve that for 2027. It's a surprisingly reasonable move from a company who is not afraid to pump out new sports titles every single year, even when its player base consistently says, hey guys, this really could have been a patch. It's unclear whether or not it's a stopgap to let the F1 team make more meaningful improvements to the game for 2027, or if this will be a more common practice for its esports titles moving forward. We've reached out to EA for comment, and we'll let you know if they get back to us. All right, so maybe at this point you're wondering, hey, are you guys going to cover that Xbox partner showcase? Well, wonder no more, because yeah, there was some interesting stuff here worth talking about. The show kicked off with a trailer for Armistice, which is a third-person gothic shooter. They called it an action roguelike coming from the relatively new indie publisher Fictions, which grew out of Private Division. But more notable is the fact that it comes from Counterplay Games, aka the folks whose last game was the not-so-great Godfall. Been a long time since we've heard anything from this studio, so hopefully they've had some time to, rally and respond to the feedback they got from that initial game. The show ended with a cinematic announcement trailer for ROG Yuga, a sequel to the top-down action-adventure game from 2020 set in ancient India, which got a pretty good rap. No day for that one, though. Developers of the excellent Metroidvania Fist Forged in Shadow Torch also announced their next one, a third-person action game called Zoo Punk. The best announcement in reality was probably Vampire Crawlers, a new game from Ponkel themselves, which is a first-person roguelike deck builder dungeon crawler, and it looks absolutely bonkers. 2026 for that one. Mostly there we got a bunch of trailers for stuff like 007 First Light and Reanimal, and a shadow drop for Clover Pit, the slot machine roguelite which has been sucking up a lot of people's time. New DLC for Dave the Diver, a new Hitman contract where you get to kill Eminem because sure, why not? And a handful of other indie announcements which we'll revisit when they get closer to their release. Hell, they might even show up in our radar segment at one point. Alright, so what came out last week? Well, we may as well start with the big dog, or at least what used to be the big dog, Call of Duty Black Ops 7. With Battlefield and Arc Raiders taking up a lot of the oxygen this year, this year's COD seems to have fared a lot worse than last year's Black Ops, as we discussed at the top of the show. But as far as Call of Duty games have historically gone, could have gone a lot worse. Here's IGN's review of the campaign, which is apparently kind of bonkers. They landed on a 6 out of 10 saying, quote, with satisfying gunplay and very fun movement abilities providing solid foundations, there's a reasonable mix of styles on show here, even if it doesn't fire on all cylinders 100% of the time. Despite being a step down from last year's exhilarating Black Ops 6 campaign, it certainly takes some big swings, they just don't always land. It's not bad, it's not good, it's simply okay, end quote. Over on Steam though, the initial vibe from players on that platform is a solid mixed, with just 41% of the reviews being positive, though note that there are only about 1,500 reviews at the time of writing, which is absolutely an indicator of quite a few things in itself. Some of the points that have popped up are gripes with hackers still being around in the multiplayer, people protesting the AI art stuff that's been going on, the fact that the campaign is always online and you can't pause it, and the simple fact that people just prefer Black Ops 6. So yeah, it feels like a bit of an L for Activision and Microsoft this year, and it does seem like they're going to have to do some rethinking now that the shooter landscape has become so much more competitive. A topic I discussed at length on this week's episode of The Game Business, a podcast hosted by veteran journalist Christopher Dring. He does a weekly show where he interviews various people from across the industry. I mean, in the last few weeks alone, he's had interviews with the CEO of Embark, Take-Two Interactive, Bandai Namco, plus he had Reggie on there. Not bad. Like I said, great show, well worth subscribing to if you like sticking close to industry news. I'll leave a link to that below the like button. Jumping over to something completely new, at least if you don't count the Chinese language release, is Where Winds Meet, the free-to-play open-world martial arts game. Not a whole heap of reviews on OpenCritic for this one, which is understandable given the nature of the game, but it does have a fair 72 with a bit of a spread of opinion. Game Rant landed on a 7 out of 10 for this one, saying, quote, overall, Where Winds Meet's most impressive and notable asset is also its undoing. The sheer amount of content and mechanics in the game comes at a price. You can spend hours doing any number of activities, from fishing to playing instruments to exploring dungeons, but most of them don't feel special or particularly deep. Apart from some highlights in the world design, main story, and combat, it feels like Where Winds Meet spreads itself too thin. It does everything, but it only excels in a few areas, end quote. On Steam, it's sitting at a very positive rating with 81% positive reviews out of almost 10,000 counted. A lot of the same sentiment echoed from the Game Rant review. Lots of stuff to sink your teeth into, great combat, surprisingly goofy humor, and a lot of those "how is this free" comments. On our team, Austin is spending some time checking this one out, as it's been a while since we threw him into the whole free-to-play dungeon, so do expect to hear some thoughts from him in the near future. Hopping over now to an all-round good story, Inazuma 11 Victory Road. Remember this one? This is a soccer-themed anime RPG from Level 5 who made Professor Layton and Ni no Kuni, and was a celebrated developer all round until they ran into some troubles. Both this game and Fantasy Life I, which released earlier this year, were stuck in development hell for the better part of a decade, and people were absolutely not happy about it. Fantasy Life I eventually released earlier this year to great critical acclaim, and the commercial sales backed it up, and now Inazuma 11 seems to have made it 2 for 2. There are only 2 reviews for this one on OpenCritic, if you can believe it, which either goes to show how much faith was lost or how long it's been since anyone thought about the series, or just how bad their PR outreach was, but they're both sitting at the 87 to 88 mark. On Steam though, overwhelmingly positive, with over 1,000 reviews counted, 96% of them giving it the thumbs up. Lots of people flagging the older games and the anime as a bias for sure, but hey, people are happy. Here's one review from Sololess I thought was pretty indicative of what this game was really all about. Quote, 5 hours into the story mode and I haven't played a single match of soccer yet. Great game, end quote. Moving on to another Japanese game now with Forestrike, which comes from indie outfit Skeleton Crew and published by Devolver Digital. This is the 2D roguelike combat game where you get to practice each combat arena before doing it for real and suffering any damage you take, which you carry through to the next encounter. Sort of like a 2D Sifu, but you get to practice before you enter a room. It's cool. It's landed at a strong 77 on OpenCritic, with lots of folks mentioning its high level of difficulty, but most people seem to have enjoyed pushing through it. Here's Checkpoint Gaming, who gave it an 8 out of 10, saying, quote, Forestrike is a satisfying, challenging experience. By allowing the player to foresee fights and predict their foes' next moves, it turns what a would-be by-the-numbers 2D fighting game into a more thoughtful experience, built around memorization, timing, and strategy. While it drags anytime you have to claw yourself back following a game over, Forestrike makes up for it with its varied combat system and appealing aesthetics, end quote. As for our team, Stu took a good look at this one for a review on the website, and as someone who's never fully completed a Souls game, he took a personal angle writing about the process of failure and being forced to power through it. He ultimately ended up recommending it, saying, quote, it's a really well-crafted, difficult but rewarding, unique brawler. Even more so, it helped me trust in the process. Just because I'm not immediately succeeding in a game, there's always a benefit to learning from your mistakes as opposed to casting them aside. Cracking the challenging puzzle of Forestrike was an infuriating, disappointing, exhilarating, and richly satisfying experience, end quote. I'll leave a link to his review below the like button. Jumping over to our radar pick for last week, The Berlin Apartment. This was the narrative game set in a single apartment, telling stories about its residents which spanned over the course of a century. It's got a strong 82 on OpenCritic with just a handful of reviews from smaller indie outlets. Here's Gamer Social Club, who I don't think we featured on the show before, but they gave it an 8 out of 10, saying, quote, The Berlin Apartment is an interesting experiment in historical fiction told in a static setting. We hardly ever see outside the apartment, and when we do, it's difficult to watch. The moments outside the apartment are reminders of what was taken from us. It's a glimpse of a war-torn country trying to reshape itself into something new. It's also a look at humanity at its best and worst. For fans of visual novels and shorter games, this is a great addition to the collection, end quote. A slightly less cheery story now with Escape from Tarkov, which released into 1.0 onto Steam last week. This has not gone great at all. It's currently sitting at a mostly negative user sentiment based on over 20,000 reviews counted, only 31% of them being positive. That's taking into account all languages, but based on the English reviews, it seems like a lot of the issues are actually around launching the game, server errors during launch, long queue times, and the game being highly unoptimized. Hard to believe that a game that's been in early access since 2016 isn't ready for launch, but to be fair, anyone who's played Tarkov in the last little while could have absolutely seen this coming. Taking the bus to Demon School now, the turn-based tactics RPG from Necrosoft, hoping to bring back that old school Persona vibe. It seems to have landed pretty well, a strong 81 on OpenCritic at the time of writing with little variance. Here's Games Radar, who scored it 4 out of 5, saying, quote, "Its fights won't satisfy tactics diehards, but everything else about Demon School gets top marks. Punching a parade of gloriously grotesque creatures with a squad of lovable demon slayers will never not be fun. Together with its chorus of upbeat synth and kaleidoscope color palette, Demon School secures itself as one of the most exciting and stylish turn-based RPGs of the year. It's an absolute riot," end quote. Microsoft delayed this one to get out of the way of Silksong in September, so let's hope this new release window gives it the chance to shine. And finally, let's take a look at Kirby Air Riders, which like Demon School has also landed at a strong 78 this week with little variance. GameSpot liked this one, scoring it 8 out of 10, saying, quote, "Kirby Air Riders is an impressive package that makes the most of its deceivingly simple mechanics. Air Ride delivers a solid kart racing experience. Top Ride is a fun, albeit a bit straightforward distraction. City Trial is chaotic in the best possible way, and the Road Trip ties it all together with its creative encounters and satisfying progression. This feels like the initial concept from 2003 taken as far as it could possibly go, and I couldn't be happier with the result," end quote. As for myself, I was a little more mixed on this one. I can 100% appreciate what Sakurai was trying to do with this one in creating a game that fits this very specific niche, but as someone who doesn't often play games with friends like this or engage in head-to-end competition, which is what I think this is absolutely designed for, it's not something that I personally can see myself going back to. I'll leave a link to my full review below the like button if you haven't already checked that one out. So what's coming out this week? Well, let me tell you, the next 7 days are crazy quiet for games, especially after the number of weeks we've just had. I count 2, maybe 3 things, 3.5, I don't know. I guess publishers are taking Thanksgiving off, even if they're not based in the US. Anyway, here are a couple of games that are coming out next week. On Monday the 24th, we've got Of Ash and Steel from Tiny Build and a developer called Fire and Frost. I've not heard of this one until this week, but it looks to be a third-person open-world RPG in the vein of something like The Witcher, but a bit more grounded with a focus on vocations, kind of like Kingdom Come Deliverance. It looks very ambitious, perhaps too ambitious. There was a free demo on Steam and it got a mostly positive sentiment with about 700 reviews so far, so it'll be interesting to keep an eye on this one, PC only. Joining Of Ash and Steel on Monday next week is Constance, which is coincidentally yet another game from Parco Games, the Japanese department store that decided to start publishing video games. This one also comes from another German indie developer called BTF, and it's a 2D action-adventure game where the protagonist wields a giant paintbrush. It looks very Celeste-inspired, lots of focus on challenging precision movements, especially in the air, and it even has a self-professed focus on mental health. Hopefully it can live up to the mammoth legacy of that game. PC only for this one as well. And last one for the week is Soulframe, the next game from Warframe developer Digital Extremes, which is welcoming founders in on the 25th of November. Basically, this is a very early buy-in at a higher price than usual for the early access period, with the benefit of permanent gear perks and the chance to be enshrined in some small way within the game forever. Now, there's a bit of a gamble here, of course. Warframe has gone on to become a very rich, multifaceted, successful game, but it certainly didn't start out that way. This kind of founders access is really for people who believe in this developer and trust them, so take a look if this catches your eye. Right, this next one is actually one we should have mentioned last week, and we were kind of kicking ourselves that we didn't because a good chunk of our team were already playing it, so put this on your radar. This beautiful, grotesque-looking thing is Morsels, and it's a top-down Binding of Isaac-style twin-stick roguelike set in a highly off-putting, goopy world where you play a tiny rat trying to escape a sewer full of strange, mutated things. The whole gameplay shtick is that you collect a variety of strange creatures as you make your way through, transforming between them at will to make use of their various weird powers, and Morsels leans hard on that sometimes wonderful, sometimes frustrating, always on the edge of your seat thing of letting you try to work out exactly what those powers are the first time you use them and how they might interact with the world, which means that things always have a good chance to go horribly, horribly wrong, but you'll remember for next time, probably. It's very fast-paced, it's quite challenging, at least from the demos we've played, but it's also got a really unique, squishy CRT core aesthetic and vibe that makes it stand out quite a bit in the visuals department. common. In fact, artist and designer Toby Dixon was also behind the mutated look and feel of Nidhogg 2. This one will have just come out by the time you hear this, and it's available on all platforms. If you like the look of Morsels, you can find a link to it over on our Steam curator page, which also has links to all of the other put this on your radar stuff we've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Our feel-good story for the week is highly relevant given Valve's recent announcements. We all know they just unveiled the Steam Machine, a console-like PC designed to sit directly under your television. Its cubular shape immediately led to an affectionate nickname, the Gabe Cube, and Reddit user 45Pico decided to develop a console boot animation worthy of the moniker. I love it, it's fantastic, and you can actually download it right now and apply it to your Steam Deck boot if you want to. I'll leave a link to that below the like button. That's a great excuse for me to once again plug our interview with Valve coming up this weekend on the Frames Per Second podcast. A fascinating discussion covering everything from the design process of this hardware to the potential prices of the devices through to even Half-Life 3. It was really just me asking questions and then them telling me no repeatedly, but hey, at least I asked. And that's all from us this week, ladies and gentlemen. Another week down, another week closer to the holiday break where hopefully we can all find some time to play some video games. Thank you for sticking through to the end of the episode. It's always much appreciated, and we'd appreciate it even more if you could drop the video a like, smash that subscribe button, and ding that notification bell so you'll never miss a video. I'm gonna go play some more Arc Raiders now, so I'll see you soon. Thanks again for watching, and a big thanks to this video's sponsor, Eureka Ergonomic. This video is brought to you by Eureka Ergonomic, who right now are doing their huge Black Friday sale that'll net you up to 40% off select items for a very limited time. Plus, you can stack an additional 8% off all non-clearance items when you use offer code SKILLUP at checkout. It's the perfect time to grab one of their award-winning standing desks, which I've been using for a long time now and absolutely love. It's an even better time to pick up their all-new Matthias office chair. If the design looks a little familiar, then that's no accident. It is inspired by the legendary Eames lounge chair, first introduced back in 1956. The design stood the test of time because of its comfort and elegance, and now Eureka Ergonomic bring their expertise to bear by adapting the design to a home office setting. Changes to the overall alignment and backrest make the Matthias a sort of chair that can be used all day long while sitting at a desk, with adjustable height and tilt settings to ensure maximum comfort. Aesthetically, the Matthias retains that classic elegance, and premium build quality and materials ensure that it'll stand the test of time. Made with real top-grain leather and with a sculpted walnut veneer, this is a chair that becomes a statement piece in whatever room it's in. I've long ago sworn off the classic gamer chairs, terrible ergonomics, and I just don't like the look of them anymore, but I absolutely love my Matthias. I think it completes my office, and it's so plush and well designed that I can spend hours in it without ever feeling uncomfortable. If you'd like to grab one, then like I said, now is the perfect time because Eureka Ergonomic is offering massive discounts site-wide as part of their Black Friday sale, and you can stack an additional 8% off any non-clearance item when you use offer code SKILLUP at checkout. That's strictly for a limited time though, so do get in quick. That's offer code SKILLUP at checkout for an additional 8% off any non-clearance item on top of the already huge discounts you'll see site-wide. Click the link below to check it out. Thanks to Eureka Ergonomic for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.